Castlevania. Even the title looks cool. It's like a mixture of Transylvania and Castle. Or at least, I assume it is. Why does this game look so good? By all rights, it should just be a simple action platformer game on the NES. But it's so much more than that. The visual storytelling from the introduction already sets you up for success, as the music swells and Simon Belmont prepares for what awaits him inside the castle. For me, Castlevania doesn't really have those nostalgia hooks that you might expect. In fact, my first playthrough of Castlevania was actually in 2004. I played the NES version on an emulator in my uncle's office, and I thought it was really hard. I still remember playing Castlevania after I had played the first Ninja Gaiden. I preferred Ninja Gaiden, but I recognized how similar they looked and kind of felt. It's funny over the years how much your opinion changes. Ninja Gaiden I still play, but Castlevania is the superior title. But that's life, I guess. My love for Castlevania, and really my love for a lot of things today still, came from when I started watching James Rolfe on the internet. For those who don't know, James Rolfe was a popular online personality who reviewed video games and movies and generally just gave his thoughts on a lot of different things. This was like a proto-YouTube where he had a website called Cinemassacre and he made videos on game trailers. His website, Cinemassacre, was a highly viewed website in my bedroom, and his series, The Angry Video Game Nerd, was very popular back in the 2000s. I liked his AVGN videos. I was drawn to his Cinemassacre content even more. Hearing James's stories about filming at a young age and his experience trying to make a career out of film were the same feelings I was going through at that time. James opened my eyes about Godzilla, movie monsters, documentaries, and generally just a lot of things. His honest take on things was quite relatable, and I found myself trying to emulate his taste. Following James's lead, I began a journey into classic film culture. Luckily for me, my dad had already been feeding me a ton of older films, and this was something that I was already a little bit accustomed to. In fact, when James was talking about Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff, I had already seen them in a movie before without even knowing it. My dad and I were big fans of Abbott and Costello back then, and Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein was a film that I really loved. But I had no idea that this was a movie that was starring the original Dracula and the original Frankenstein monster actors. At the end of that film, there's actually the Invisible Man. He kind of comes in out of nowhere. He's my favorite movie monster. In that movie, he's actually cameoed by Vincent Price.
Now that we've seen the last of Dracula, the Wolfman and the monster, there's nobody to frighten us anymore.
Oh, that's too bad. I was hoping to get in on the excitement.
Who said that?
Allow me to introduce myself. I'm the Invisible Man.
I started watching and rewatching all the classic horror movies, and I dressed up as the Invisible Man for Halloween for 2 years in a row. Take that as you will. I was memorizing useless trivia about these movies as best I could all throughout high school. I say all this not to bore you about my life, or to try and brag about a useless new hobby I was starting to get into. Instead, I want you to understand my mindset for this very date, October 8th, 2009. This was the date that Castlevania Part 1 had aired on GameTrailers.com, which was my go-to site for all the things game news and information at that time. I still remember clicking open the video that night, thinking to myself how I wasn't that much into Castlevania. But I'd give it a shot anyways. For the sake of this video, I decided to watch that video again. I gained nothing of note by watching this today. Still the same, I still like it. But for 18-year-old me, sitting at my desktop computer in my bedroom, I felt inspired to play Castlevania all over again. I sat on my computer, I booted it up on an emulator, and I played it. All I can really say is that I died a lot. I enjoyed the experience more than the previous times, but I still didn't get that feeling like it was incredible. It wasn't until sometime later in the 3rd or 4th level when things just started to click. It all kicked in and I felt like this game was actually a lot better than I gave it credit for. I kind of felt unstoppable as Simon. I remember thinking the whip was very powerful and very fun. I don't think I made it past the 4th level though at that time, and I stopped playing. And then, a few years went on. I didn't play the game again until I was in the middle of university. I remember I had my PlayStation Vita. I remember it was a modded PS Vita at the time, and I was playing a ton of different classic games on it. Really enjoyed that experience. The Vita is a great way for playing classic games. At this time, I had my headphones on, I was locked in, and I was playing through a ton of NES games. I remember just getting through Metroid and thinking it was fantastic. So I booted up Castlevania and thought, okay, here we go, this is the time. I remember I beat Castlevania over the course of one day in my university time there. It was amazing. Honestly, I think that might have been the best playthrough of Castlevania I've ever gone through. It was just so perfect. I felt very locked in. Over the course of the week, I decided to beat the game again. I think I beat it 3 or 4 more times during that week. Now, when I say I beat the game, this is where we're all going to disagree, probably. So, personally, when I play Castlevania, I play using save states, since Castlevania to me has always been through an emulator. That's my nostalgia of Castlevania. It's the only real way that I've played the game, and I enjoy it that way. If it makes you feel any better, I usually use save states at the beginning of a level, and then if I die in the level or don't like my health outcome, I'll load back to the beginning of that level. For me, that's my experience playing Castlevania. Now to some of you, this is probably a deal breaker, and that I've not beat the game. To others, this is probably just you saying, hey, he's having fun. That's awesome. He's enjoying the game. And to some of you, you're wondering why I'm actually still playing a game that's this old. I know that might sound crazy to others, but I got a friend who seriously, he looks at the screen and he's just like, this is way too old. How can anybody enjoy this? I don't know how that's a thought process in this day and age, but crazy to me. Regardless, this is how I play it. This is how I love it. When I say I beat it, that's how I beat it. Castlevania has this Halloween, movie monster, Greek mythology vibe to it. It just seems so odd, yet it pairs together kind of perfectly. You know, you got like a Jason and the Argonauts and Clash of the Titans kind of thing happening there, but you've also got your movie monster madness thing kind of mixed into all of it. The idea of the Mummy and Medusa fighting for the side of Dracula just kind of makes sense. And so does the idea of like Death being the sidekick to Dracula himself. You know, like Dracula is so intense that Death is actually just his buddy. I've always just kind of liked that. It clicks, it makes sense, makes the stakes high, and it just works on so many levels. If I'm being really honest with myself, one of the main gateway drugs into enjoying Castlevania fully all the way through has to be the music. I'm a huge fan of the music to Castlevania. I'll sit there while I'm working 8 hours a day and I will listen to Castlevania remixes pretty much on loop or repeat. I remember one time at work I was listening to this remix of Bloody Tears for probably over and over again, and I really enjoyed it. And I was wondering, who did this remix? I took a look, and it had like the Smash Bros like background on it, and it had like a 3D modeled Simon Belmont kind of character. And I was like, oh, that's odd. And then I thought to myself, and I was like, wait, he's not into Smash Bros, is he? And I looked it up, and it had like just happened. There was like this new DLC, and Simon Belmont was in Castlevania. And I was blown away. I really couldn't believe it that Castlevania was now integrated into Smash Bros. That was amazing. And best of all, now the music gets to be done by the Smash Bros. Team because they do fantastic music. So I don't play as Simon in Smash Bros. I play as Link. For gameplay, you really just can't beat the overall feel of Simon's whip. I can't get over this. It's like a shotgun in Doom. Simon's whip is just why Castlevania feels as overpowering as it does. His whip can just hit an enemy first try and boom, they're gone. Now, keep in mind, I also like to upgrade that whip and try to keep that as much as I can throughout the game. So when you get the all-time powerful whip, you just feel like a god, just smacking things. But even in the first level, when you got those witches or those hags coming at you, those whips just hit them and they go out right away. Even the dogs. It's awesome. A lot of people say that the jumping feels a little stiff, and I think it can feel stiff until you kind of get used to it. But once you hit that stride, that jump feels perfect. Again, think about it in terms of Doom, where when you spin and you fire your weapon. Sometimes when you spin and you fire, you just nail like 2 enemies at the same time, and that feels fantastic. Sometimes you miss. It's just how it goes. In Castlevania here, that jump feels the exact same way. If you just happen to time it right when you're moving forward and you jump and you get that nice little glide, it feels great. When you miss, it feels clunky. But that's just how it goes. It's not Mario when it comes to platforming. This is something different. It's a little bit more clunky, like armor or something. But it feels great. There are little nuances that do get annoying. Enemies will hit you and you'll fall off a cliff. Or sometimes you won't know if something is a solid platform or not, and you'll fall off the cliff. Other times you'll be walking upstairs or downstairs, and you're worried that an enemy might clip into you, and it happens. These things are all super annoying, obviously. I don't know what to tell you. You just gotta get over it, and then the game's fun. Don't mind me, it's just a day later and I'm making a smoothie for the morning. As far as like standout levels and moments go, there's a few different ones. They're not really in any particular order, but in level 3, for example, there's a moment where you kind of get on top of what looks like a rampart or like a wall to the castle area. In the background, you start to see like motifs of the castle kind of around you. And it has this feeling of like environmental storytelling. I'm sure it did a lot more back then, but it has this feeling of like environmental storytelling that I really appreciate, because as you're going through level 3, you start to see like, oh, that's where Dracula's gonna be. Like I'm getting a little bit closer to where I'm gonna have to fight the big guy, you know? I've always liked that moment because it feels like progression in a really good way that, you know, some games do, some games don't, but in this one, I like how they do that there. Definitely the last level leading up to Dracula is the one that I find the most frustrating. I don't really like it as much because you've got all of the birds flying through and you got the clockwork stuff happening. It gets a little bit hairy in there, and personally I've never really liked that level, but it's leading up to the fight with Dracula. And the boss battles in this game, some might be easy, some might be hard, but they're all fun. I really like the characters. Having to fight, you know, the Frankenstein monster, or the mummy, or Medusa, or the giant bat, or even Death itself. They're all really fun boss battles. In fact, Death might be the most fun. In my playthrough, I normally have the holy water and I just toss that thing like crazy. I spam it as much as I can, and that takes the boss down really quickly. But I have fought some of these bosses with just my whip, including Death, and it's not easy. It's really hard. In fact, for me at least, it takes a long time. I remember one time playing through and trying to beat Death, and I had a save state at the very beginning of just before playing against Death, and all I had was my whip. And I thought, you know what, I wonder if I can do this. And it took me a long time to get through the entire fight. I was able to do it, but it took me so many tries to finally get there. You got to really memorize his patterns and where he's throwing those scythes. But really fun boss. Dracula himself is a very fun boss. When you beat Dracula, which isn't too hard on its own, you then have to fight what I think the community calls the Cookie Monster. The Cookie Monster battle is kind of difficult. The hitbox as far as Cookie Monster goes is a little bit bigger than his sprite, so it seems like when he jumps, you gotta kind of sneak just under him so you can whip back a little bit and hit him. And if you miss that window at all, then he will just hit you, even though his body doesn't totally look like it clips into you. That fight though is a lot of fun. Again, if you do that one without any kind of save states in between the battle, you just do it as the battle goes. It's a very thrilling fight, hoping that you can beat that guy. He is frustrating, but also when you beat him, it's so satisfying. The level I like the most, I think, is actually the intro level. The very beginning level has this feeling of like an overture to the game. It kind of starts off in just like a very basic little flat level thing where you're getting as many weapons and items as you can, and you're kind of building it up. You go into the castle and you fight a bunch of hags. These hags are simple and they're just kind of flying at you, and you hit them with a whip. Then there's wolves, which do a little bit of a vertical jump, and then they jump at you as well. This reminds me of later in the game, once you start to fight those little gremlin guys. After you go through that, there's a section where you eventually fight a bat, and then you go down into a little, what'd you call it? Cave kind of area. In the cave area, there's like swamp creatures that come out, and they start fighting, and it feels like you're in an otherworldly kind of a place. You get out of there, and you're back, and you're fighting some more bats, more hags, until you get to the boss, and the boss happens to be a giant bat. And I feel like this whole thing is supposed to be sort of representative of the entire game in some way, shape, or form. It's doing this whole little sequence all the way up until you fight Dracula. So I've always kind of felt like it's this overture of things to come, and it's just like a small little like miniature diorama almost of like what you're about to do. So I've always liked level 1. I find it a lot of fun. I've gone through level 1 many times. It's the E1 M1 of Castlevania. As far as this game goes, in the Castlevania series, it's not my favorite Castlevania, but it's not far off either. It's very high up there. I don't know exactly where, but it's very high up there. In terms of ranking this game, I would give this one a solid 8 out of 10 bats. Every time I play it, I've got a smile on my face, and I go back to it probably pretty close to once a year, if not once every 2 years. And that's saying something for a game. It is on the shorter side, which helps quite a bit. And it just kind of starts off a whole series of Castlevania that's really, really fun. So, good job, Castlevania. I enjoy playing you. All in all, it's a solid game, and one worthy enough of being in my Monty picks. Speaking of, in my Monty picks lately, I haven't really talked too much about my top 100 list. It's another sort of aspect about the Monty picks that I was supposed to kind of get into, and I haven't really done it as much because it seems always kind of strange to talk about a game and then talk about my top 100 games of all time. So I felt it was more appropriate to make a separate video about that. Now I've come up with a bit of a solution that I haven't talked about yet, so I'll mention it here. My solution is that every 10 Monty Pick videos or so, I think I'm going to go through what I have for my top 100 list and sort of accumulate that list as I go. So I think, this is number 7, holy smokes. This is Monty Pick number 7, wow. So after a couple more videos come out here, maybe 3 more videos, then I will put up my current listings for the top 100, and we'll kind of just see where I'm at with some of these games that I've done in the Monty list, and a few others as well, just to have some staples in there. But we'll build that list and see where we're at from there, just in case you were wondering. Okay, well, thank you so much for watching this and hanging out with me in this Castlevania part. I can't wait until we get to some of those other games. There's some really good ones in this series, and a few I haven't played before too, so it's going to be exciting to get into those. Okay, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next Monty video. Bye.